PD Land Trust. Something is going over there.
Good evening. Today is Tuesday, March 28th, 2023. The time is now 5:32 p.m. This meeting of Georgetown County Council is being called to order. We'll have Councilman Carolina to lead us, to give us the invocation and to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Heavenly Father, we come together this day again, asking for guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Continue to allow us to grow closer as a group and team in nurturing the bonds of our communities. Guide us with your grace as we make decisions that will affect the citizens, businesses, environment, and the future of Georgetown County. Put within us a revitalized energy of progress as we move forward in 2023. Continue to remind us that all that we do as stewards over the land is for the greater glory of you in the service of humanity and progress in Georgetown County. Continued peace and blessings to all in our county, state, and country. In your holy name, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman Carolina. And thank you all for attending this meeting of Georgetown County Council. We'll now move on down to the approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a couple of motions, please. Item number 9C, Resolution 2305. I make the motion that we defer that until we have a little more time to look at it.
We have a motion from Councilman Elliott to defer item 9C pertaining to, item 9C pertaining to resolution number 23-05. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Carolina. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion passed. Item 9C is now deferred.
Also, I'd like to make a motion that item 10A, Resolution 2204, we defer that indefinitely until consideration can be given to the land use element to ensure that they do not conflict with each other.
Thank you. We have a motion from Councilman Elliott to defer ordinance number 22-44, an amendment to the Georgetown County Comprehensive Plan Natural Resource Element. Is there a second?
Second.
To be deferred indefinitely. We have a second from Councilor Mercado. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carried. Third reading of ordinance number 22-44 has been deferred indefinitely, with the stipulation that Councilman Elliott mentioned. Okay, now we move on back down to the approval of the agenda with those particular changes. Is there a motion to approve the agenda with the changes that were just made?
So moved.
It's moved by Councilman Newton. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Carolina. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carries. We move down to special reports and presentations. Our nonprofit spotlight this evening is on the PD Land Trust. Lyles Cooper will make the presentation.
Thank you, Chairman Morant and Council, for having me today. I am Lyles Cooper. I'm the Executive Director with PD Land Trust, and I've got a trust assistant over here. Thank you. PD Land Trust started back in 1999 as an all-volunteer organization, and we've grown now over the last 23 years to have a staff of 6.5 and a board of 21 members. We serve the 9 counties of the PD watershed, and we're very happy to have your own Phil Hemingway recently join our board of directors representing Georgetown County. And we work with our communities. Next. The mission of the Land Trust is to conserve and promote an appreciation of the significant natural, agricultural, and historical resources of the Pee watershed of South Carolina. We are not a political organization. We are not an environmental advocacy organization other than good stewardship of the land, and we work with willing private landowners. Our vision is to protect the past and ensure the future. And protecting the Pee watershed, our critical resources, is one of the most important things that does define and connects every one of us. And we are funded primarily by individuals and private foundations like our own Bunnell Foundation, who invited me to speak today. Like I said, we do cover the whole Pee watershed. So that's the Great Pee River, the Little Pee, Lynches, Waccamaw, and the Black Rivers, and all the tributaries. And where we are today is where all of those funnel together into Winyah Bay. So the work that we do in the upper part of the watershed does affect downstream. We currently have 93 conservation easements across the 11 counties, the 9 counties plus 2 additional adjacent counties. And our easements average about 510 acres. We have a total of about 38,000 acres, and we should be adding about 5 more within the next 14 months. So what is an easement? A lot of people think of a power line easement. That's not what this is. This is a legal perpetual document that we work with private landowners to personalize. We have a framework from our national accreditation that we have to work within, but each individual landowner, we work with them to personalize their property to plan their land legacy. And it generally restricts, the main things are dividing the property, residential structure, how many residential structures, no commercial or industrial activity, and it restricts impervious surface amounts, as well as our biggest focus, especially in Georgetown County, is buffers on our waterways and our scenic roadways. Typically, most landowners do reserve the rights to live, work, and play on their property, and they can also lease the property. It does stay on the tax rolls. This is not a public access property, so it does stay on the tax rolls and does have a large public benefit as defined through the IRS. So there are incentives. The federal government figured out a long time ago that they couldn't continuously buy public property because they'd never be able to afford to manage it long term. So they wanted to incentivize private landowners to be good stewards of their land. So we work within those guidelines with the IRS and to protect the open space, wildlife habitat, historic lands, and outdoor public recreation. Public access is not required. If you're a farmer or have working forest, you know that public access can be a detriment when trying to manage property, but we do work with a lot of public access entities for public properties. About 70% of our 38,000 acres directly impact our rivers and creeks. And about 80% of them are working farms and forests with sustainable management plans. The biggest thing we're working on is that avoiding parcelization and reducing the highest and best use of those large working properties. We have a landowner guide that we work with landowners to go through to plan their land legacy, and we do a lot of outreach to landowners and the general public. Conservation really supports our economic development. My background's actually in economic development, and I learned very quickly by promoting a county how important that livability factor was. But we also still live in a predominantly rural area, and so we still have to sustain our economic lives based from farming and forestry and outdoor recreation, which is almost 1/3 of our economy. We're very excited to be growing in Georgetown County. We have 4 new conservation easement properties that should be closing this year, in Georgetown. Georgetown, I've spent a lot of time in my life in Georgetown, especially on the rivers, and it has some of the most absolutely beautiful paddling in the country. And this was taken right outside of Cypress Preserve, right above Andrews. And it's one of our private entities that we worked with a couple of different organizations to protect permanently. So most of you are familiar with the Black River New State Park Water Trail. And although our properties that we're working with private landowners aren't the public access properties of part of the park, we're continuously working with private landowners to protect their land within this area. All the stars on that trail map that you see, those are all private protected properties that we've done. But we don't work alone. We work with a lot of other land trusts as well as private and public entities to try to make sure we protect this wonderful area. We do work with local governments as well, and we worked with Georgetown County years ago for the mitigation on the airport expansion, and have worked with a lot of other municipalities throughout our area. So the governor set a really big goal to double protected land in South Carolina by the year 2050. So we have 27 years to protect 3 million more acres. We're excited about the goal and a little bit terrified at the same time. That doesn't mean Georgetown County is going to double, but we do hope to continue the very positive progress that we're having on land use, as well as the protection of the private and the public entities throughout our area. So we look forward to working with private landowners and all of you in any way we can to support conservation in the Georgetown community. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. Any questions or comments from council?
Thank you.
Thank you. We now have a presentation for the Outstanding Safety Achievement Award. Van Henson and Robert Barfield.
Mr. Chair, members of council, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you tonight here to give a brief presentation as far as on a recent accomplishment of Georgetown County. My name is Van Henson. I am the Director of Risk Management Services with the South Carolina Association of Counties. Just, kind of brief overview with the Association of Counties. Of course, our primary missions are to be able to provide training, education, ancillary services, resources, and of course, most importantly, representation of our counties at the state level. All the counties in South Carolina are members. However, we do also offer some additional services, one of those being insurance trusts. Georgetown County is a member of our workers' compensation insurance trust. Therefore, we do insure the county as far as with your excess coverage and such as far as on your workers' comp. With that said, every year at the end of January, we actually hold a membership meeting and educational conference. This past January, Georgetown County was actually recognized for an Outstanding Safety Achievement Award. This Outstanding Safety Achievement Award was based off of a program put in place called the Safety Awareness Detective Program. Just to give you a brief overview of it so you understand some of it, the Central Safety Committee developed the Safety Awareness Detective Program to increase safety awareness throughout the county. Paper magnifying glasses were hidden throughout county departments with safety questions written on them. When an employee found the hidden magnifying glass, they would have to bring it to the risk manager and answer a safety question. If they answered it correctly, they received a $10 Walmart gift card. Clues were hidden in strategic places so employees could be more aware where fire extinguishers were located or areas where housekeeping issues would arise. Clues were also hidden on county vehicles to encourage employees to walk around the vehicles and inspect them prior to operating. If a job required personal protective equipment, a clue would be hidden near the personal protective equipment to determine if employees were using the proper equipment for the task. In an effort to ensure all departments could participate, safety clues were also hidden in offices with ergonomic questions on them as well. When an employee would answer the safety question correctly, their picture would be posted so other people could learn from their answer as well. This program actually increased safety throughout the county. 30 clues were dispersed in offices, vehicles, and in areas where personal protective equipment was kept in an effort to raise awareness. Now, this program ultimately did achieve that desired outcome for increased awareness. And we thought this was very unique and was definitely noteworthy enough to bestow an Outstanding Safety Achievement Award as far as for the Risk Management Department in the County of Georgetown for this innovative approach to trying to bring safety awareness for the employees. As far as risk management, everyone in the county is a risk manager. Holly Causey is the risk manager for Georgetown County. However, it's every employee's responsibility as far as to be part of the risk management process. Let's face it, the number one asset of the county is its employees. Without them, services don't get rendered. So it's important they stay healthy, and if, God forbid, sometimes when bad things do happen, that the proper processes are in place as far as to get them healthy and back to work as quickly as possible. And that's the goal, purpose of risk management within your county, is to get those things quickly for the employees. In my experience of working with Georgetown County over the years, one thing I've noted is that here in recent years, we're seeing a progressive trend as far as with your experience modifier rate, where it's continually to decrease, which is a good thing. I give you an example. All things being equal, if a county has a experience modifier rate of 1, that means you're coming in with expected losses for a county of your size. Anything below that is advantageous, meaning you actually will see savings based off of that. A prime example, last year alone, your experience modifier rate was a 0.84, 16 points below. That means truly you saw a 16% savings on your insurance premium, what you would have had it been at expected losses. Now, the one thing is a little premature to say specifically, but you guys are going to see another drop this year in your experience modifier rate. So this really shows that programs such as this is working in your county. The communication levels are there. Departments are working hard as far as to try to do the right things and take the time to make the proper steps and to minimize the hazards and dangers that are there for employees. And of course, when employees are more concerned about doing the right thing for themselves, your citizens also see that in the work that they're bestowing on behalf of you all out in the departments as well. So this should not be a feat this really goes by in a fleeting manner. This is a substantial move forward as far as with your program, and great things are going on in Georgetown County. With that said, at this point in time, I would like to ask that Ms. Holly Causey, Georgetown County Risk Manager, as well as any of the safety committee members that are present, please come forward at this point in time. I can present you with your plaque for your 2022 Outstanding Safety Achievement Award for the Safety Awareness Detective Program. Congratulations.
I'm coming too. Yeah.
You don't want a crowd though.
Okay.
You're the best looking one out of all of us anyway, Louis. Except for all that gray hair. Grecian form.
It works for Morgan Freeman.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Congratulations again to our county staff for being creative to find ways to save the county some economic funds. Thank you. We move down to our public comments. A public comment period is included on each meeting agenda and shall be limited to 30 minutes. Each speaker will be limited to no more than 3 minutes. No speaker may yield his or her allotted time to another speaker. Members of the public who wish to address council during the public input period should sign up with the clerk of council before the meeting is called to order. You'll notice a timer will be on the screen as to when your time may be expiring, and we ask you to conclude your comments promptly upon that particular time period. It is my understanding that we have several persons signed up this evening for public comment. If some of the public comments pertain to the items which have been deferred, we ask that you still have the opportunity to speak if you so desire. But if your comments are going to be duplicative, we ask that you defer your comments because it would have already been heard, because you'll be limited to no more than 3 minutes. I don't know the concise number which have signed up, but only 30 minutes is set aside for public comments. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chairman, we do have 28 speakers signed up tonight.
28.
28.
Madam Clerk, we may be able to extend it and allot 2 minutes per speaker as maximum.
All right, then we will have 2 minutes per speaker. Our first speaker tonight will be Jennifer Hunt.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Hunt, and I live in Andrews. And I'm here about EMS is no longer in the city limits of Andrews. It is now 8 minutes away at Big Dam. And that is unacceptable. I've been contacted by a few council members who want to explain to me how it works, how government works, how local government works, municipalities. I don't know. I don't need to know. That's your responsibility. Because we need EMS in Andrews. Would Midway be defunct without letting Mr. Anderson know? I don't think so. How many people need to suffer because they have to wait 20 plus minutes? And the estimate of $300,000 that was given from Mr. Ellis, I don't think so. I haven't seen a quote from anyone to give that number. I asked him. It was an internal number. That is unacceptable. I do appreciate your hard work, but don't forget the people.
Eddie Lee.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Eddie Lee. I'm the Mayor Pro Tem of the town of Andrews. And my report is as follows to the council and the chairman. Definition of respect means that you accept somebody for who they are, even when they're different from you, or you don't agree with them. The definition of disrespect is a lack of respect and courtesy. Case in point. The EMS service was moved from the town of Andrews with no regard for the well-being of citizens. That's when services are needed for the citizens. Responding to a medical emergency, time is important. That can make the difference between life and death. As elected official of the town of Andrews, the Honorable Mayor Frank McCleary was not notified the EMS service moved from the town of Andrews. That is disrespect for the mayor of Andrews and the city of Andrews. My relationship with the mayor, I respect the mayor when he's in his office working. I respect the mayor when he goes home from work. I respect the mayor when he goes to bed at night. In conclusion, in John, the Bible, God said, you sit down at my table and eat my bread, then you put your lip against me. As a governmental body of the town of Andrews, we will remove the need with a common sense approach and without stupidity being involved.
Deborah Wright.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Deborah Wright, and I live in the town limits of Andrews. Minutes make a difference for a choking baby, a person gasping for breath, a person having a heart attack or stroke, bleeding, have a burn or a gunshot wound. In the past, I've had to call the ambulance to my house for my father who was gasping for breath with emphysema. I also had to call the ambulance for my mother with congestive heart failure. I also had to call EMS for a neighbor I found dead in his house. Then the ambulance came to me one Friday night when I fell outside and broke my neck. Thank goodness. At these times, the EMS was in town and only took 4 or 5 minutes to come. Minutes make a difference when you are suffering a life or death situation. Bring EMS back in the city limits. Since the ambulance has been moved to the Big Dam area, it takes about 8 minutes to get into town. The problem becomes more critical if a train is blocking the highway. It could take an additional 10 minutes or more for the train to pass. Heaven forbid if work is being done on the tracks or the bridge. It could take a day or more for the road to open up again. And we all remember the big flood. That took more than a couple of weeks for the roads to be opened up again. Of course, there's an alternative route. If that happens, the ambulance would leave Big Dam Swamp, have to turn on the Thurgood Marshall Highway, which also has a railroad crossing, then get to Andrews. You have to go halfway to King Street at Central, and then turn at Central Church, then turn again on the Simmons Ridge Bridge, which also has a bridge crossing Black River. Then get back on Highway 521. This way takes at least 50 minutes. Minutes make a difference. You say the ambulance from the 9 Mile Curve can come. There are 2 train crossings. I just have a block on the other side of the train crossing, and I time myself. It takes 5 minutes for me to turn around and go back. Thank you.
Pastor Ernie Cooper.
Good evening. I am Pastor Ernie L. Cooper Sr., resident of Andrews, the town of Andrews. Personally, I would like to say that the EMS helped save my life. During the COVID, I was in contact with the COVID. I'm also a military veteran. And as a veteran, my wife called the VA. In the VA, my doctor said, you need to call the EMS immediately to get your husband to the hospital. Without the EMS, I would not be standing here today. The EMS came to my house, picked me up. I had pneumonia in my lungs. I had a lot going on, but because of the EMS, I am a survivor today. I was able to overcome. And I'm grateful. And as a resident of Andrews, when I think about Andrews High, 509 children. When I think about Rosemary Elementary School, 367 children. When I think about Andrews Elementary, 688 children. That's a total of 1,564 children. Also, the dialysis. On a given day, there's 22 to 24 patients per day. You have the Christian school also that is in Andrew. I don't have the exact number, but when we think about it, it is essential that we have the EMS there. It is a critical need. I'm asking every one of you, put yourself in that place. Put yourself, take a moment and think about if you didn't have the necessity, what you need there, we may not be here today. I would not be standing here. I think about those children. I think about all of us in the town of Andrew. I think about the critical point, the critical need that we have. So in my closing, let's keep moving in the right direction. Getting the EMS there.
Patricia Green.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Patricia Green, and I live in Andrews. On March the 10th, I called for EMS service, and it took them 20-plus minutes for a severe breathing issue, and they passed the house. So that was extra minutes. So we really need EMS service in Andrews. Thank you.
Christopher Anderson.
Good evening, council. Thank you for this opportunity. As outlined, my name is Christopher Anderson. I am a business owner in the municipality of Andrews, South Carolina. I'm petitioning you today to reconsider your decision and allowing the emergency medical services to be moved back to the town of Andrews. According to section our Title 44, Section 61 of the South Carolina Code of Law, it specifies the use of the emergency medical services and certain procedures and guidelines, those procedures as outlined in the law. I want to say personally, I suffer with a condition called insulinoma. I also have a seizure disorder. Multiple times, the emergency medical services has been called to my office to transport me to the hospital. Time is of the essence when I need to get to the hospital, and now we're having to wait more than 10 to 15 minutes for those services to get to my place of business. I'm petitioning council to reconsider their decision and allow those services to be moved back inside of the municipality. And lastly, according to statistics, it says $1, one out of $8 for medical insurances supports our emergency medical services. But 7 of those $8 come from the taxpayers. And so if the majority of the funds come from the taxpayers, then can council tell me why didn't the taxpayers have an opportunity to respond to such a response that came from said council? Thank you.
Healer Richards.
Good evening, council. My name is Pilar Richard. I'm here today and I want to bring to attention, you all say, email Ms. Floyd's office if you want to speak. I did that. Call Ms. Floyd's office if you want to speak. I did that too. I'm still waiting back to hear from county council about the historical commission board. I've done everything that you all asked me to do and I'm still waiting. So my question tonight is, what's happening? What's up? I'm a mom, I'm a business owner. I'm digging into a lot of history. I'm 5th generation to property that was purchased in Georgetown County 6 years after the American Revolution, and I want to tell my story. But I can't tell my story without help from Georgetown County. I've been to the county museum. I've been to the county library. I've done what I'm supposed to do. I went to Columbia. Where's my history? Or where do I start with others with like mind to form more history or to take in the history that we have already had passed down from generations to generations. They say that it's not on the board or an appointed issue right now, but it's detrimental for me. I'm a mom, like I said, I'm a business owner, and my daughters are sitting here with me. I need to tell them about the legacy about Georgetown, not nowhere else, but about Georgetown, about where we came from, because if we don't know where we came from, we don't know where we're going. That's a big problem here in Georgetown County, a big problem. Communication is very key, and it's a lack thereof in Georgetown County, in this board, for the people, the residents, the tax-paying citizens that make it possible for Georgetown County to run daily. Again, my question is, what's up? Historical Commission Board, I'm waiting.
Wade Mullins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of council, I'm Wade Mullins. I'm here to speak on item 10B, which is the inlet point, the effort to amend the inlet point PD. I'm going to step away. I'm going to talk loud enough. I'm going to stand right here if it's okay. You should have this in your packet. We sent a packet to everyone to make sure you understood exactly what is going on. And the reason I want to talk about this is because I think there's been some confusion in how this was presented to you. This effort to amend the plan development that has been presented to you by the Peninsula. First of all, what we're talking about here is a PUD. Within that green square, you guys approved this back in the 90s. This is the only thing that you have of record, is the PUD, which was zoned R10. There are 26 homeowners here. The location where what's been represented to you is a sewer plant, which we now know because I believe Mr. Stacy is going to tell you he made an error, and there was an article today saying that that's actually a water reservoir. When this land was given by the original developer to the Peninsula. This is your applicant. Your applicant is the Peninsula. They are applying to put 2 homes here so they can make $1.6 to $2 million. Not one homeowner within this square, and I've got the letters here that I can hand to you, it's not in your packet. Not one homeowner within this square supports this. I'm a homeowner here. We've communicated with every single one of them. Not one of them supports this. So and there's some confusion because you said, well, we've got letters from the HOA. The HOA, obviously they're in support. They're going to make $1.6 to $2 million. The other letter you'll hear was not properly presented. Those HOAs are controlled by these 33 houses. Not one of these homeowners is in favor of it. So what I'd like to do, you guys hear each member explain to us how and why you would vote in favor of it. There is no reason other than to support what the Peninsula is doing. They're really acting as a developer seeking to make money and impacting the Inlet Point South homeowners within that. We ask that you vote it down.
Russ Hunt.
Thank you, council members. I was reading last night a Maya Angelou quote, very good quote. It's develop enough courage so that you can stand up for yourself and then stand up for somebody else. And today I stand up for my neighbors for what Mr. Mullins had just talked about. Georgetown County, the Zoning Commission required both HOA boards to move forward with the PUD change by getting authorization from both boards. The IPS board vote was a farce. No board meeting, just an email string. No board discussion, no motions. Our bylaws required Robert's laws of rules of order. They were not followed. No consideration on how the PUD change would affect the 26 homes. I'm going to draw you how this homeowners Inlet Point South looks. This is the 26 homes. These are the 33 homes. The 4 board members that voted on this live in the peninsula over here. They stand to benefit financially, a clear conflict of interest. Mr. Lee, who's the president, signed the letter, also lives in the peninsula. The IPS board did not fulfill their fiduciary responsibilities. They did not represent all 59 homes. This is not a legal issue, but a matter of equity. We have minority rights. 26 homes collectively pay $125,000 a year in HOA dues. This is a form of taxation without representation. Please vote no to 10B. Thank you.
Ray Tanner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak briefly today. Mr. Mullins has a picture here of my porch over at 222 Inlet Point. I've been a resident there for more than 8 years, and I rented the property before that. That is the current view. It's also the view of many of my neighbors and will affect the entire neighborhood, if you will, as explained by Mr. Mullins. It says in our covenants, when I purchased this property, it said in the covenants that a permanent structure would not be built. There would not be homes located in this site. The 2 homes that you have a request to rezone will certainly block this view. Now, certainly, you could say, well, you can sell, you can move, you can leave. I realize those are options. But it also affects the property value as well, not only me, but the other residents in this community. But the covenant clearly stated that there would not be homes built in this position. And I certainly would appreciate very much that you vote this amendment down. It affects too many people and has not been properly vetted in a legal way. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I hope that you will consider the procedures that have occurred to get us to this point today. Thank you.
Eric Obaugh.
Members of County Council, thank you for your time tonight. I'm Eric Obaugh. My wife and I own a home at 234 Inlet Point Drive, right next to Mr. Tanner, directly across from the water treatment plant in Inlet Point South. This is not a sewer plant, so that is, as it has been betrayed to you, the Planning Commission, and the public. It's been portrayed incorrectly by the Peninsula's HOA and our local media. On numerous occasions, the water plant has inappropriately been called a sewer plant, where that is further from the truth. It is a water treatment plant located on Inlet Point Drive, as the actual sewer plant is located inside the entrance of the Peninsula HOA, not in Inlet Point South. The water treatment plant may not be exactly what homeowners want to look at, but it's better than 2 50-foot structures sitting completely out of place in our neighborhood, blocking our views to see the ocean and the marsh. Plus, it has been said it has been decommissioned and will be dismantled when that is further from the truth also, as part of the water treatment plant will still be used for irrigation purposes, but that will only be used to irrigate the Peninsula homeowners, not Inlet Point South, as that was portrayed in the last city council or county council meeting. An important piece that has so conveniently been left out once again is that one of the large parts of the plant would still be needed to irrigate the homes at the Peninsula, not Inlet Point South. It would not be completely dismantled. That means we will still have part of the water treatment plant and 2 50-foot homes sitting like a sore thumb in our neighborhood. A few other questions. Will the portion of the plant being left behind need the water from the pond behind the water plant that Inlet Point South owns? Plus, what is the water condition and the quality of the pond? Seems the wildlife has disappeared since the decommissioning of the water plant in less than a year. Where does the pond go after the partial water water treatment plant is dismantled. Last, we are fine with the water treatment plant being raised, but there are better options, and we would be willing to discuss and contribute to a new use of the benefit our community. I'd ask you to vote against 10B this evening. Thank you very much for your time.
Joey McHugh.
Good evening, I'm Joey McHugh, and I own 2 deeded intervals at 224 Inlet Point South. My family has owned those intervals for over 25 years. In fact, our daughter took her first steps there. At no time during the ownership by my mother and stepfather, nor my ownership in this property, was it ever considered that there would be anything on that property where this water treatment facility is, other than the water treatment facility, which until the last year and a half or so, you couldn't even see from the road because it had shrubbery all around. As part of the decommissioning process, they took down some of the shrubbery. When you block the view of the ocean, you block part of what people bought. Now, I'm here to talk about notice and the insufficient notice according to Georgetown County's own ordinance as it relates to hearings before the Planning Commission that we didn't receive that got us all here so angry. The last portion of the Pledge of Allegiance, which we all said at the beginning of this meeting, was, "And liberty and justice for all." Justice requires an opportunity to be heard. In this case, deeded owners of intervals were not given the opportunity to be heard, nor were people who purchased property but whose names had not yet arrived on the tax roll because 1 year hadn't gone by and the old owners didn't tell y'all the new owners had showed up. There are at least 2 envelopes in your own planning commission's file that were returned. And they're returned because those people don't own the property anymore. Within 400 feet, every deeded property owner is required to receive notice. The obligation to provide the names of those owners falls on the property, in this case, the peninsula. Can't help it. They chose to go the easy route to look at the tax rolls. They didn't fulfill the obligations under your own ordinance. This needs to go back to the Planning Commission because it got here without input from owners, taxpayers. I'm not a citizen of Georgetown County, but I paid y'all $2,752 last year in property taxes. Does justice mean that you don't hear about it?
Please conclude. Thank you.
Wesley Peel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, member of council. I'm Wesley Peel. I'm a lawyer. I represent all those folks that just spoke and plus a few more with homes on Inlet Point South. Since we got 2 minutes, I'm going to try to move quickly. I think we need to look at the application packet. That's what's in there about what is incorrect. It says it's a request to amend Inlet Point South plan development. Okay. As in the packet I sent you, Inlet Point South is not a planned development district. That did not exist at the time this was approved. The only thing I could find in y'all's files, and I came down here to the Planning Commission and reviewed them, the only thing in there is I found was an ordinance from 1989, which approved Inlet Point South as a PUD R10, which is a designation that no longer exists. PUD R10 is an overlay. If you look on your zoning map, the whole point down there, including the condos, is just PUD R10. That's all it's zoned as. It's not a planned development district. So under your current ordinance 619, it's not proper because this is not a mixed-use development. If the folks came to you today with Inlet Point South, said, well, I'd like this to be a planned development district, you could not approve it. It's not valid under state law and it's not valid under your ordinance. So what it is a non-conforming, pre-existing, but vested district. But when you move to amend a non-conforming area, you've got to bring it current with current zoning ordinances. This is not the way to do it by saying to amend a planned development district because it's not what it is. I'd also point out that this land, that blue rectangle, has never been subdivided properly. It's still listed as Inlet Point South. It was never subdivided between the peninsula. Litchfield didn't get the plat approved. That is against the law. It's a misdemeanor to do that. And so those deeds, those quitclaim deeds are void ab initio. They're void because they violate the law. So your applicant doesn't stand it. Thank you. I appreciate y'all's time. Establish what these folks say. Thank you.
Dan Stacy.
Good evening, Council. I do want to own a mistake that I made. I did make representations. This was a sewer treatment facility. The whole system as a whole was a water treatment, wastewater treatment, and sewer treatment facility operating under one permit. The sewer treatment components were actually more at the Black Gum Road intersection. What happened at this location was water and wastewater that was treated with some chlorine chemicals. That was my mistake. We paid a DHEC contractor or a third-party contractor to monitor and report this for years, and I simply misunderstood the operational character of everything that happened there. Regardless, though, this is an industrial tank site and a treatment facility with some chlorine treatments there, which has been decommissioned by the peninsula. With regard to some of the suggestions you've heard tonight, this is an old PUD. The Enabling Act of 1994 was passed, not necessarily to tell counties how to use their land, but to give a framework for how best to establish the procedures for land use. For the pre-94 developments, this old PUD, the process we've handled in Georgetown County and with most of the coastal old PUDs have been to treat them as planned development modifications. To suggest we submitted the wrong form would indicate we needed to submit a rezoning application as opposed to a planned development district modification. I submit to you at the end of the day, this is a land use question going from community services industrial tank site to 2 single-family lots. What we put on the form, I can refile it if we want to, but it doesn't change the essence of what's being asked today. You've heard lots of information about how this is illegal. Predated projects are grandfathered. That's the way this county's handled this forever, whether it be Litchfield Oaks or Marlin Quay or where my office is, for example. They've always had the single-use grandfathering status. Technically, this place is still mixed use with community services as well as single-family homes. And this peninsula property, that they do own this property within this PUD R10 district and are the actual applicant and the appropriate applicant. You've heard a lot about HOA politics. This is a land for the county. I'm glad to answer questions if Holly finishes it with that.
Emily Nellermore. Becky Ryan.
Good evening. My name is Becky Ryan. I'm the North Coast Office Director of the Coastal Conservation League. I plan to speak with you this evening about the natural resource element, but given the deferral, I would again ask that this be sent back to the Planning Commission so that the public can have some input in the proposed revisions to the natural resource element. There's not been any discussion from County Council about the revisions, including the latest amendments. And given that you're wanting this to match up with the land use element, it makes sense to send it back to Planning Commission so that those two can be considered simultaneously. I would also express some concern about the upcoming land use element, given that there was a lengthy, extensive drafting process from planning staff with significant public engagement for the natural resource element that was then changed between first and second reading, and now again between second and third reading for that natural resource element. And I worry what that will mean for a more contentious element like the land use element. We want to make sure that the public is engaged and that their voices, their opinions that are put forward are respected. So I again would ask you to consider sending it back to the Planning Commission so that that public engagement process can continue. I would also like to add my voice to the Inlet Point South residents who are calling for that property to be restored into green space. I think it's relevant given the natural resource element as well. We need more green space in Georgetown County. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Dr. Elizabeth Blood. Luther Palmer.
Good evening. My name is Letha Palmer. I am a citizen of Andrews. Once again, as that citizen, the question is, why was EMS removed from Andrews? And when is the timeline for it to be returned? Now, back on February 21st, one of my cousins was involved in an accident at the gas station. EMS was called 3 times. And they were told it was going to take about 32 minutes for them to get to her. She could have died that day due to a fire, but no matter what it was, 32 minutes is a long time for somebody to get help. And as it was stated earlier, time is of an essence. If that was you, would you want to wait 32 minutes? There's things going on in Andrews that need to be it has to be a stop to it. At some point, the citizens of Andrews who pay their tax dollars need to be heard. We are citizens. We pay our tax dollars. You receive our tax money, but you don't want to give us anything. Bring it back, and bring it back now.
Cindy Person.
Good evening, Council. Thank you very much. We appreciate your decision to not entertain a version of the natural resources element that has been substantially revised from the plan that was approved by Planning Commission. And we also appreciate the concern for consistency with the land use element. We trust that an indefinite deferral, and I'm not 100% sure what that means, but we trust that it means that the natural resources element will be going back to the Planning Commission for review and consideration of the issues of consistency with the land use element and any other concerns that council or the administration may have, and that it can then go through the proper channels required by the South Carolina Planning Act before it's properly considered by county council in any form other than the original form of the unrevised plan that was approved and submitted by Planning Commission. Thank you very much.
Amy Flagler.
Good evening, Council. My name is Amy Pinckney Black, and I am a member of the town council for the town of Andrews. And this is the first time y'all seeing my face, and believe me, this shouldn't be the last time if you do it right. As they say, time is this is the third time, which is true. I have a sick husband. And when it comes to medical situation, I shouldn't have to wait 15, 20, 30 minutes before you all voted to make this ridiculous move to put the MS over in Big Dam. Have anyone ever heard the doctor say if you have waited 10 more minutes, it would have been too late? Can't be. Because those words are not nice words. No member want to hear them. The doctors tell their family 10 more minutes would have been too late. So, on your heart, in your conscience, how many people in Andrews may have gotten to the hospital 10 minutes too late? Did any of y'all ever thought about it? Evidently not. Can't be. So let this not be in your heart, on your heart, in your conscience, on your conscience, the word too late. Bring EMS back to Andrews in the city not the outskirts, the city limits of ANDREWS. Andrews. Wait, I pay 6,000, 10,000 a year. Maybe some of y'all might need to help me pay it because y'all make it all around decision. Thank you.
William Cooper. William Cooper.
Good evening, council. I can't follow that, and I'll defer my comments. Thank you.
Pertina Sanders.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Bertina Sanders. I own Low Country Magic, located in our beautiful historic district of Georgetown. We are proud members of Georgetown Business Association as well as the Gullah Geechee Chamber of Commerce. We have happily been in business over a year and doing great and thriving. My husband is Ray Sanders, and unfortunately, he hasn't been given the same opportunity for his business. We have reached out to each and every one of you regarding establishing our tattoo business, with getting nothing in return. We have had a private meeting with Ms. Richardson and Ms. Enfinger, and still nothing. They were asked to give me a reason to why we can't be in general commercial, and they can't answer. General Commercial Code 6111.102 states businesses involving the rendering of personal or professional service according to Federal NAICS Code 812199. Tattooing is a personal care service. Tattooing is also a professional service. We shouldn't be limited. After attending the February 14th meeting, Ms. McCarty's advisor, Mr. Benson, reached out to us inquiring details. After explaining it to him, he also agreed we shouldn't be limited. I reached out to our state representatives. They, as well as the rest of Georgetown, would like you all to answer the question, why? What harm would our business bring to Georgetown? How would it hurt the appearance of Georgetown? And just plain out say why each of you don't want this business, because you are definitely not speaking for our people. I have personally sent each of you via email a petition with over 1,000 signatures, along with comments from our people stating what they want. At this point, this is plain out discrimination. Thank you for your time.
Ryan McHugh.
Council, thank you for your time tonight. I'm here to address Inlet Point South and the splitting of that property into two lots. Currently, there's a water treatment facility there, as we've discussed, a blue round tank with a domed lid, a cinder block building, a green tank, right? Just utilitarian infrastructure that we've kind of all gotten accustomed to living in 2023 like we do. It's there, but it's not obtrusive. Under most of the time, over the years, it's actually been almost completely shrouded in shrubbery, to the point, without peeking through the bushes, you wouldn't even know it was there. This picture was taken from the second story of Ray's house. Clear sunset views. What's interesting, though, is if you stand on his first level balcony, you can still see the ocean. These structures are that short, 10, maybe 15 feet tall. To replace them with a 50-foot building, 10,000 square feet. Yes, everyone would rather live or see a house than infrastructure. But would you rather see a house than the beach or the marsh? No, it's disingenuous to the point of the neighborhood. It's why you choose to be in this community. And I think that needs to be the main consideration here, is that it's disingenuous to the intention of the original development. Thank you. I'm in opposition of putting two lots there.
Gary Weinrich.
Thank you, Council. I'm Gary Weinrich. These aren't my words, but these are words that you need to consider. And I thank you for deferring the natural resource element. It has gotten badly off track. But the public opinion survey, as you know, that the county did and released last year, said that 96% of the respondents believe preserving our natural resources is the highest priority. And the South Carolina County Association of Counties, whose representative was here earlier, they say the need for public input is critical throughout the planning process. And the Association of American Planning Association, to which I think our planners belong, say that public participation is essential in analyzing issues, generating visions, developing plans, and monitoring the outcomes. So what do? One of our planners, Matt, over here, did an A+ job in involving the public in all aspects of he worked for months and put in hundreds of hours along with participants. That was an example of how to do public participation. And now we have the land use element, which arguably is going to be the most difficult and the most important coming up. Are we going to use this land use, the natural resource, as an example where we hold community meetings with the consultant you're hiring and bring people together and say, you know, your opinion matters, but if we don't like what you say, the administration of this county is going to rewrite it differently? I hope that's not the case. Thank you very much.
Moretta Wilson.
Good evening. Again, my name is Moretta Wilson, here on behalf of the town of Andrews in my capacity as the town administrator. We are all here to serve in a capacity, whatever that is, and for however long that might be. And our responsibility to serve first starts with communication. Communicating that there was a possible issue could have led to the town and the county partnering in an alternative. At least maybe gathering minds and saying, let's do a facilities grant, or at least a common courtesy to have a conversation so we can let our citizens know whatever decision had already been made. Although they would not have liked it, at least they would have known. We wouldn't have to hear in the rumor mill that this had happened. We have been accommodating partners with the county since 1992 to 2018, when we housed EMS for free for 26 years. When the county decided to move into their own facility, that was fine, but we provided that space. In 1999, we were accommodating partners when we gave up every penny of local accommodations and hospitality tax to Georgetown County and received nothing in return. As stewards of this county, using the word partner or partnering seems foreign when it comes to reciprocity from the county to the town. And it shouldn't be that way. Everything seems to be obstinate and oppressive as it relates to Andrews. Creating false narratives to further divide citizens as opposed to being a unified county is toxic and draining, and it shouldn't be that way. It has to stop. We can't continue to maneuver in this manner. The issue, this particular is one of many, just with the entire. So we need to focus our efforts to have elements that seem to be targeting, and we need to be working on holistically addressing all of the concerns throughout Georgetown County so we can all be healthy and viable. Thank you.
Frank McCleary.
Good evening, Council. I'm the mayor of the town of Andrews. Today it's been 4 months, 3 appearances from myself, 1 unanswered email, and 0 response on this critical assets that's been removed from the town of Andrews. So you've heard tonight from the people of Andrews And I hope that resonates with you because this is a serious matter. We all have a responsibility as leaders, as elected officials in this town, to do what's best for the citizen. I think we all know that what has happened has not been well thought out. This decision was made at a department level, not with the council. This was not on any agenda. So you did not, in fact, many of you did not know Mr. Ellis came forward that this had happened. At this point, the building now has a permit to be demoed. That demolition started or about to start, and then also you have another building there that you started to demo without a permit. So you further put the town citizens at risk. This is unacceptable. This can't be a money issue. It can't be a policy issue. This is about politics, and politics should not come into play with the health and fitness of our citizen. Again, this is unacceptable. So you've heard from the people tonight. What I have before you is over 1,000 signatures, and continue to come in that says, please bring the service back. You've heard from our citizens tonight, personal experiences. I'm so proud of you all for stepping up. This is important that we come together because they have not heard the cries from myself and other elected officials. Now, I've also filed a complaint with the DHEC to look into this because, again, this is a problem. I'm elected to represent Andrews, and so is Mr. Newton and Mr. Carolina. Mr. Carolina, I appreciate your efforts, but we can make this better. I don't know how you're going to fix that because you don't have a building anymore to put in it. So that's a problem. You've taken the doors, the HVAC, the generator, everything is gone. When I was there, I saw kids playing around this place. The old Andrews High building that is demoed right now, it can't move because you did not get a permit for that. Sir, you know you're a DHEC expert. You know that should not have happened.
Mr. Mayor,
again, the last thing I would say, yes, sir, I will shut this down. But again, as professionals, we should have an opportunity to dialogue and not be placed on a 2-minute limit when lives are at stake. Thank you.
Don DeVos.
Chairman, Council, I'm glad to be here with you. I'm gonna put in a plug for Andrews. I'm a family physician. Not only the minutes make a difference, but seconds do. With your heart, your brain, bleeding, anything like that. So y'all need to really consider strongly what they're trying to promote to you tonight. But I'm at Inlet Point. I bought a long time ago. Joe Payne, this president, told me when I asked him would there ever be a house built on that property. He checked with the president. He said no. Now, that's all I know. I swear on the Bible. I take a lot of detective, whatever you want to do, but that's what he told me. But in South Carolina, particularly Georgetown, somebody tells you something, your word should be your bond. And I feel like I should have gotten a paper or a legal document signed, but this was right at the beginning of this development. So I said just very few lots were sold. And I've done without that housing for 25 years, and I hope I can do another 25. But anyway, we'd like to y'all consider turning this thing down. Thank
you. Allison Newton.
Could be good.
Good evening. My name is Allison Newton. I'm a resident of the town of Andrews. I would just like to say that I understand from Mr. Ellis's perspective why it made logical sense to move EMS to Big Dam and why it made economical sense. But it doesn't make rational sense. It doesn't make human sense. My whole life, the county and the town of Andrews have worked together as one. And in recent years, that divide has gotten greater and greater and greater. And it's the citizens of Andrews that are suffering. We need the county's assistance, and we get passed over time and time again for other areas of the county. And I just ask that you look at the population of the town of Andrews and the needs of the town of Andrews. And moving EMS out of the town limits is detrimental to the daily infrastructure for the town of Andrews. Thank you.
Council, that is the final speaker for tonight.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Mr.
Please.
Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
One moment. We thank you all for speaking in front of council. We appreciate the comment that you have made. And for the residents from the town of Andrews, please note that council is looking into the matter of the removal. And we will get back with you regarding what action we'll be taking regarding it. EMS and our administrator will be looking into that particular matter, have already began looking into it. So we will take some action on that at a later date to see what can be accomplished from the removal. So your comments are not falling on deaf ears. Thank you for all your comments.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to also make a statement representing District 3 and my colleague of District 5, and to the citizens of District 3 and 5, your concerns have been heard concerning the removal of the EMS service from within the town limits. We will be going further and giving further consideration to come back with a solution that we feel will be in the best interest of District 3. Thank you.
Now, we move on down to our consent agenda. By process of the agenda being approved, 4 matters on the consent agenda were previously approved by virtue of the agenda approval process. Procurement number 22-057, procurement number 22-098, procurement number 22-099, and procurement number 22-106. We move to our public hearings regarding ordinance number 23-09, an ordinance to amend the transportation element of the Georgetown County Comprehensive Plan. The floor is now open for public comments pertaining to ordinance number 23-09. Is there anyone desiring to speak regarding ordinance number 23-09, the transportation element of the Georgetown Comprehensive Plan?
Good evening again. My name is Becky Ryan. I'm the North Coast Office Director with the Coastal Conservation League. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the Waccamaw COG and our planning staff for an excellent draft of the transportation element. They're very admirable goals, especially, such as increasing bike and pedestrian infrastructure and the Coast RTA ridership. The natural resource element also had reference to a multimodal path. Our economic development element that's currently being drafted has a goal of increasing workforce housing. I think all of these elements need to be considered together, working holistically to approach these efforts. If we are to reduce the traffic congestion, especially on 17, that's going to be getting cars off the road. Additional road improvements, widening can only do so much. It's a Band-Aid. We need to take cars off the road. And we can do that through increasing ridership of Coast RTA, but also developing and designing walkable communities so that people do not have to get in a car to go to a grocery store or restaurants or houses. They can walk within a mixed-use development where you can have it all together clustered. It also helps our natural resources if you cluster development by maintaining open space and maintaining tree stands and canopies, and you can even have wildlife corridors. All of these things are working together, and it's really meant to be a comprehensive plan. So I really would encourage you all to consider these elements not individually, but really bring them together to make sure that they are working consistently. So thank you so much. This is meant to be a plan, again, for 10 years, setting the course for Georgetown County. So I really appreciate you taking time and consideration to do this properly. And I think deferring the natural resource element makes sense if it can all be considered together holistically. Thank you again for your consideration.
Again, my name is P. Laura Richards, and about the comprehensive plan, I just want to say before I leave, please remember my daughters. They're 6 and 7 years old. So when this plan is on the table again, remember them and don't write them out of it, okay? Thanks. Have a good night.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak regarding the ordinance to amend the transportation element of the Georgetown County Comprehensive Plan? Seeing none, the public hearing is now closed. We move down to a resolution and proclamation. Proclamation number 23-03 to declare April 23 as Fair Housing Month in Georgetown County. Ms. Broach, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'll keep this brief. This is a resolution that we pass annually. Obviously, it declares Fair Housing Month in Georgetown County, and I believe that it's also a requirement for some grants that we seek as well. So we would ask that you please approve this.
Thank you, Ms. Broach. Any questions for Ms. Broach? Seeing none, is there a motion pertaining to proclamation number 23-03?
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Elliott for approval of the ordinance, of the resolution. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Councilman Anderson. Any discussion? All in favor for the adoption, please raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Broach. We move down to resolution number 23-04. A resolution approving and authorizing the acceptance of real property and appurtenances from the South Carolina State Ports Authority pursuant to a legislative act of the South Carolina Legislature and to carry out all necessary acts and matters relating thereto. Attorney Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Council. This is simply a resolution for Georgetown County to comply with the proviso passed by the legislature to move the Port Authority from the port to the county. Part of that proviso required that each party, the port and the county, demonstrate some acceptance of the property and the transfer of the property. So we're doing that by resolution. And the resolution language simply says that we accept it and then also authorizes appropriate county parties or staff to take whatever actions necessary to complete that transfer.
Thank you. Any questions for Attorney Watson from council? No, seeing is there a motion pertaining to resolution number 23-04?
So moved.
Move for adoption. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, well, moved by Councilman Anderson, second by Councilor Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll move down to proclamation number 23-06 in recognition of National County Government Month. Ms. Broach again.
Mr. Chairman, April is National County Government Month. This is another proclamation that we do annually. It recognizes all the many and varied things that county government does for its residents and celebrates our employees and their hard work as well. We would ask that you pass this. We would also like to take a photo, if you so choose to pass it, to send on to the National Association of Counties and the South Carolina Association of Counties. And if you would like for me to read it, I'm happy to read the proclamation, or if you would like to skip that, given the length of this evening's agenda, I would certainly understand that as well.
Sure, thank you, Ms. Broach. I think all council members have read the requested proclamation. Is there a motion pertaining to proclamation number 23-06?
So moved.
Moved by Council Mercado for adoption. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Council Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carries.
Sir, I would ask that all of council come up and let's take a picture to send to SCAC and NACO.
Sounds good. Allow council members to come forward.
I appreciate it. I know.
We'll move down to ordinance number 23-06. Ms. Richardson.
Yes, sir. This is item 10B, which is an ordinance to amend the Inlet Point South Plan Development to add 2 single-family lots on the site of the former water treatment facility. This development contains 26 single-family lots and what's referred to as Inlet Point, 33 single-family lots and what is referred to as the peninsula, and then an additional group of multifamily condos that are not part of this request. PD was, according to our records, the PD was first approved as a PUD in August of 1987 for the Inlet Point South lots. According to council minutes from our files, a request was then filed in 1989 to add in the peninsula lots. I don't have any changes to report to you since third reading, except I think as Mr. Stacy has already clarified, even though the initial application referenced a water and sewer treatment facility, this was actually a water treatment facility, and our agenda report needs to be changed to reflect that as well. Regardless, the site was formally used and approved for a site for utility treatment. The current request is for single-family homes for residential. So there's a change in land use, and that is why this request is before us. Changes in land use and a plan development are considered a major change and have to go through this PD amendment process. The county's future land use map designates this property as medium density. 10,000 square foot lots do fall within the medium density designation, so a change to the map is not needed. And as we told you last month, the Planning Commission did hold their public hearing on this issue in February. We had 3 speak in opposition, and we received 7 opposition letters at that time and 3 in favor. The vote of the commission was to approve the request, and that vote was 4-2. As we discussed last meeting, staff's recommendation is that if the PD change is approved, that you also include the conditions from number 12 in our staff report, which does include the requirement that the plat to subdivide this parcel out be reviewed, approved, and then subsequently recorded at the Register of Deeds office before any land disturbance or construction took place on the site. I'd be glad then to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson. Any questions from council?
Ms. Richardson, I've got a quick question. Mr. Stacy stated something about the potential to reapply based on, I didn't grasp that.
Yeah, I think he was indicating he could reapply under, I don't know if that addressed the sewer treatment facility. I'm not sure what you were referring to.
Ms. Mercado, some of the information you were given by Mr. Peel indicated that basically this was an inappropriate application because it wasn't appropriately a plan development modification. It should have perhaps been a straight rezoning application. My only comment was, if the ultimate concept is to modify community service industrial use to single-family residential lots, does it matter what the form says at the top? My point was, if that was the council's wish, or if for some reason that was a meritorious argument, we could simply reapply, but I think the application is fine on its face.
Thank you.
No.
How many people showed up when they had storm?
Any further questions for Ms. Richardson?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have a few. Complicated project, Ms. Richardson.
Yes, sir.
We're thankful we have you to guide us through this. I have a few questions off comments that were made that troubles me. One is when this land was originally purchased by several of the homeowners in the surrounding area of the water treatment plant or water plant, most of them said that they were told that nothing would ever be built there and where I come from, and I cannot recall who made the statement, but a handshake and your word as good as anything ever written down on paper. And it should still hold true today, but apparently it doesn't. Is there anything that indicates that that this was written down anywhere?
Certainly, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Make a comment.
The plans that we have in our office that were stamped and approved by the Planning Commission from the 89 on, and there were some in the early 90s, show this area for water treatment. That's how the project was approved. That's how the PUD or the plan development was approved. So at that time, that is what was allowed there. Certainly, a plan development can be amended, and that process is spelled out in our zoning ordinance, and that's the process that the applicant is going through here, is to change that plan. But the plan was approved for water treatment, and that was the allowed use at the time when it was approved.
But are the same people that told these potential homeowners or residents nothing would ever be built there, are these the same people that are there today?
I don't know that, Mr. Newton, I'm afraid. It sounds like some of them are, based on, their recollection of the history of when that occurred. But I would imagine that of the 26, some of them have changed hands since that time.
Getting back to everything that's been brought up, and this goes to my colleagues to my left and right, I think with the amount of confusion and historically, not in all cases, but in a lot of cases, we have sided with the residents that are in question when there's a controversy that comes up like this. And there's no way us seven can dissect everything that's been said as what's true, not necessarily true, but what's correct and what's false. We're not attorneys. We never will be attorneys, hopefully. And I just think this is something that we really need to consider voting down. Let the two sides get together, hash out what they may, come to an agreeable decision which will satisfy both parties. But I do not think we can do that with both parties where we sit here today. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Richardson, for all your work on this. I know it's been a lot.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from council? Questions from Ms. Richardson?
Yes, on Councilman Newton's points, what would be the process for the two parties to reconcile? Or is there?
That would be up to them. I think that depends on if council denies or defers or withdraw the request. They can't make the same request in a 12-month period from the time that the request was initiated. So, I mean, I think this request is there, so that 12-month time frame would be the only factor, I think.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a few comments myself. Not often did Mr. Newton and I agree on anything here lately, but I listened to what he had to say, and I'm gonna go kind of down that same road. I'm not a lawyer either. I'm an old manufacturing guy. I built guided missiles and computers. And I know the one thing that's in common here is this case has got a lot of moving parts. But I think from me doing my due diligence, it always comes down to the money. And I know that the Peninsula HOA has sunk cost of about $500,000. And they're looking to collect through the sale of this property somewhere south of $2 million. Is that correct?
Know that.
Okay, well, I think I heard those figures. But as my colleague said, you're kind of putting us between a rock and a hard place. And I think, if you'll recall, I'm the one that said this would have made a good case study, and that was the first thing that came out of my mouth at second reading. So I'm going to agree, and you'll see how I'll vote here, but I think that, and I've talked to some of you folks, that it's too bad you can't settle this amongst yourself rather than we making a decision up here with all these moving parts. And I'll rest.
Thank you.
One other question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
The time period is 1 year from today, if it's voted down, that it can be brought back, or when it was filed?
I think when it was filed. Yes.
When it was filed. So I think that would be ample time for two sides to get together.
It'll probably take us to January.
January. Thank you.
Ms. Richardson, let me ask. From some of the comments that were heard this evening, I became somewhat confused as to who actually owned the tract of property. I couldn't seem to figure out from some of the comments that were made who the actual owners were.
Mr. Stacy could probably expand on that better than I, but the peninsula was deeded the property via quitclaim deed from the Litchfield Company, is my understanding. They do have a deed to the property. The subdivision of the property was shown in an exhibit attached to that deed, but there was never a plat recorded that separated out those two parcels. That's why when you pull it up on our tax map on our GIS maps, it still shows as one piece because that plat was never recorded. So I think that the Inlet Point South HOA, as the owner of the remainder, has been getting the tax bill for the entirety of the tract.
When you say Inlet Point South, that is the one, according to your chart, is
That's the smaller square,
the small square. They're the one who actually own the property.
the green square. They own the balance of the property.
They own the balance of the property. So they own the property where the water treatment plant once sat.
The Peninsula HOA owns the water treatment plant property. That's what they were given a quitclaim deed to by the Litchfield Company.
And there are some comments about notice given to the residents in the area. So notice have been given to all the residents in the area in accordance with the county's.
Our ordinance requires that property owners within 400 feet of a site be given notice. Our ordinance refers to the tax records as the determining factor for who receives that notice. Okay. So when Mr. Stacy makes his application, he utilizes the GIS system and the tax records to give us that list of those within 400 feet. We check that list against the GIS map. It matches, so then the letters go out. If there are interval property owners, they would not show up, unfortunately, as a part of the tax record.
But the applicant was, well, the applicant was proper. The owner of the property was actually the applicant.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions from council?
One quick one, Ollie. Who did the water treatment service both Inlet Point South and I'm sorry, the other one?
The Peninsula.
Peninsula, or did it just service one?
Just the Peninsula, I think. Just the Peninsula, I think, is correct. The Peninsula was not included in the original application, and based on the minutes I read, it was because they were working out this water treatment issue. So they didn't come in initially.
So it was put there initially to service just the peninsula?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay. I think we may be a little more confused now than we were previously. Okay.
I've got just a comment for Ms. Richardson and everyone. I'd encourage everyone to work together on resolving this. And if I can go ahead and motion to defer this.
We have a motion from
I'd like to second that.
Mercado to defer it. Second by Councilman Anderson. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to defer, please raise your hand. Opposed? Matter is being deferred. And Ms. Richardson, from that being deferred, we're looking at ordinance number 23-06. Is that part of the same, that's part of the same plan, isn't it?
Yes, sir. That's the one we just deferred, 2306.
That's what we just deferred. I'm sorry. I was looking at the other one. All right, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, we'll move on down to ordinance number 23-09. An ordinance to amend the transportation element of the Georgetown County Comprehensive Plan. One moment, Richardson.
That's one. Huh?
Okay, Ms. Richardson.
Yes, this is third reading on an ordinance to amend the transportation element for the comprehensive plan. Ms. Lee Kane was here with us at the last meeting, and she went over those, basically the new element that they have worked on revising for us. They do comply with the guidelines that were mandated by the state. Our last update to this element was in 2009. There haven't been any changes to the document since second reading. This document will, of course, be reformatted to match the appearance and look of our other two elements that have already been passed, cultural resources and the housing element, pending final approval. As a reminder, the Planning Commission met on this back in February. They held a public hearing, and they voted unanimously in favor of recommending this to council. I'll be glad to answer any questions about the transportation element.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson. Any questions for Ms. Richardson? Seeing none, is there a motion pertaining to ordinance number 23-09?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Move for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Carolina. Moved by Councilman Newton. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carries. We move down to ordinance number 2310, an ordinance revising and amending ordinance number 2018-26. Attorney Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, sir. This is, there's been no changes since second reading. You'll recall this goes back to a 2008 ordinance that has a 5-year sunset provision, and it is now up again for renewal before council. This is to allow the Sunday sale of alcohol and the use of taxes derived from those sales.
Thank you. Any questions for Attorney Watson from council? Is there a motion pertaining to ordinance number 2310?
So moved.
Move for approval is by Councilman Elliott. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Newton. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carries. We move on to second reading of ordinances. Ordinance number 23-11. Ms. Richardson.
Yes, sir. This is an ordinance to amend Appendix C, which is the Stormwater Management and Flood Damage Prevention Ordinance of Georgetown County. And the item just under this one, item 11B, also goes together. The first one I'll go over now deals with the flood ordinance, and then the next ordinance deals with the adoption of the proposed flood maps. We last amended this ordinance back in October of 2018, and it regulates construction in our flood hazard zones that are identified on the flood insurance rate maps, or the FIRMs. As you know, Georgetown participates in the flood insurance program, which is administered by the NFIP, or the National Flood Insurance Program. Lots of acronyms in this agenda report for you. The NFIP does make it mandatory that banks and lending institutions provide federally backed flood insurance for structures that are in these special flood hazard areas. A flood ordinance is required for participation in the NFIP, and we have made updates to this ordinance in order to meet the minimum standards of the state and federal regulations. We have worked with SCDNR and FEMA on the changes. We've had several reviews with them back and forth in the month of February, and after several discussions, they have approved the updated draft that is in front of you tonight. We've also included a checklist from DNR that shows that they have certified and signed off on the draft that we provided. It is required that we update this ordinance before we adopt the maps, and that both of those need to happen by May 9th of 2023. Failure to do so could result in us being removed from the NFIP, which of course is not something that we or any coastal county would want to see. And I did want to introduce Matt Millwood, who is a senior planner from our office, and Stephen Elliott, who's our building official, who are both here with me tonight for two reasons. One, I wanted to take the opportunity to thank them. They have done a good bit of work on both this ordinance and the map adoption. Many phone calls and conversations with state folks and federal folks as well. So I wanted to acknowledge that, and also to have them here as our resident subject matter experts on the flood ordinance and the flood maps, in case you do have some more technical questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Richardson?
Yes, I have a few. They're very easy. This whole thing, where did it come from? What got us to this point right here?
The adoption of the maps.
Well, the whole, I call it a mandate, but it's not a mandate. We have a choice. We can deny this tonight, but the consequences could be detrimental to the whole county.
That's right. It could be removal from the NFIP, the Natural Flood Insurance Program, which is what gives us money after a storm event. You know, we have a hurricane, and we may not be eligible for that funding.
And that could just be catastrophic for the county, and if a hurricane was to hit, or a tornado, or any other disaster.
Yes, sir.
But if we approve it, then what are the consequences?
I think what we have before you tonight in terms of the ordinance is the state model ordinance with a few tweaks and modifications that we worked on. We have not increased the requirements beyond, we do have the 1 foot freeboard. We have that today. There is, you know, if you make repairs or improvements to your structure over 50% of its value, then you have to bring it up to the flood requirements. That is still there today. Those things haven't changed. We have had some back and forth discussions with them on accessory structures and when the flood ordinance requirements do and do not kick in. But I think what you and I have discussed deals with some of the unnumbered A flood zones.
A flood zone, correct.
We currently, those structures have been required to be elevated 3 feet. If they show up on the map in what's called an unnumbered A, where we don't know what the BFE is, then they've been required to be elevated 3 feet. We now have a requirement that was required by DNR and FEMA that the property owner or the developer in those areas will have to determine what that BFE is before they can do construction on the site.
So basically what this does is there's residents out there tonight, once we approve this and then go through the third reading and we get all this done by May 9th, and we have residents out there that are in low income, that live in some of these areas, and if something was to happen to their structure and then they decide to move a mobile home or rebuild what they have, it's going to cost them much, much more than it would have last year. We're causing the people that could least afford this, we're putting the burden on their back.
If it occurs in those specific
flood A
under A
areas.
zones. Yes, sir. And we have had a good bit of discussion about that in our office and with the county administrator. And I think what we would propose would be to look at this as part of the budget discussion and look at a way that the county could provide some assistance, especially for lower income residents that may come in and develop in those very limited areas. We may not see any development in those areas, but we may, and to look at the potential from a funding mechanism of potentially having a pot of money to utilize if those residents, met the income requirements and needed that assistance before they could move on their mobile home or build a structure there.
Once this is enacted, do we have any plans to notify the people that live in those zones to let them know what's actually has taken place? Or do we let something happen and then they come to us and they say, we didn't know all this?
I don't think we have any specific plans to send out notifications just to people within the unnumbered A zone. We certainly do have plans to work with Ms. Broach to publicize once the maps are approved. There are new maps online and publicize to people where they can go to see if their district has changed, make that information available to them in the best way we can.
Okay. Well, I have all the confidence in the world in Miss Jackie doing that.
too.
I have a question. First, a comment. I think, Raymond, what you asked, this is all driven by FEMA. That's the top of the umbrella. And what I was not familiar with, and I've done a lot of these things, was this AO zone. We had AE and VE and X was property that wasn't in a flood zone at all. So is AO, did I hear you say if you're in an AO zone, you automatically have to elevate the basic flood elevation, the top of the floor to 3 feet above ground level?
That's an A zone.
And
So
an A zone.
with no number provided.
Okay, what's this AO thing then?
I'm gonna have to refer that to Mr. Elliott.
It was in the notes there, and
We don't have a lot of it.
Okay.
I'm certain.
I'm just curious because I'd never heard of that before.
There's actually a small area of Depew on the ocean front that, based on the elevation, falls into an AO zone. I think Matt and I determined that it affects about 4 or 5 lots. And in the AO zone, believe it or not, you can actually build 3 feet to the finished floor above grade on the ocean front in that small area. That's the only place that 3-foot rule would apply. In the A zone, a BFE has to be determined.
Right.
It sounds crazy to say it. When you look at the maps, you scratch your head and say, how did this small area become A? It's got to be some kind of computer algorithm because it doesn't really make
So we
a
really
lot of
don't.
common sense to the average person.
We don't know then. I mean, we really don't know. And I'm not, that's nothing bad on you or me, but that makes no sense to me, particularly in what's normally a VE zone. And with it just.
Well, as you will see, if you review these new maps, there's a lot of properties along the oceanfront that are now currently a VE zone.
Right.
That's going to be transitioned to an AE.
Okay. It seems like with all the land sinking and everything else that we hear about and the seas rising, it'd be the other way around.
Well, actually, sea level is, according to our experts, is coming up about 1 foot. But the elevations to build on most of the properties is going down.
That's my point. So I can't understand why we'd change a VE to an AE. But that's all right. We're getting into the weeds here. I was just wondering really what the AO was, but thank you.
One other quick question while Mr. Elliott's up there. Everything that is currently in the county now that's in these flood zones will not be affected. They're grandfathered in unless the 50% rule or whatever it was Ms. Richardson said comes into play.
Well,
Nothing will any, the property can stay as is, these new flood numbers and whatever will not affect existing properties is what I'm getting at. Only for new properties and 50% damaged or whatever?
For lack of a better term, they aren't grandfathered in, but they could become non-conforming structures. In other words, if they're conforming now because their elevation is here, but the new map puts their required building elevation here, then they're going to be a non-conforming structure.
What does that mean? What does that mean to the layperson?
Well, if they already have a flood insurance policy, then it shouldn't affect their premiums in any way. But if they choose to do improvements to the structure or get damage to the point where it's 50% or greater than the structure value, then at that point, they would have to bring the building up to flood compliance. So if that means elevating the structure, then that's what they would have to do. If elevation is not an option, then demolition would be the next course of action.
So they'll be what, in planning terms, we would say legally non-conforming. They're non-conforming, but, you know, through no fault of their own. And it wouldn't be until those changes happen that they would be required to comply with the new designation.
If they're not legally non-conforming, would that mean that their insurance premiums are going to go up, or would they stay the same, or?
Well, I can't speak for the insurance industry, but from what we've been told, because it's no fault of their own, they should remain pretty much on a constant or normal premium that they already have. But now, if they let the coverage lapse, then that's a game changer at that point.
It's my understanding that their insurance rates will go up if there's a mortgage on the property.
If there's a mortgage? Really?
Well, that's totally up to the insurance industry, but there's a new insurance rating called Risk 2.0. So the way houses have been assessed in the past has changed in the last 2 years. Insurance providers no longer need an actual elevation certificate to apply a risk factor to your property. Now that's outside of, you know, what we do as a county. That's just the insurance industry.
So we're in the dubious situation of excuse my French, damned if we do and we're damned if we don't.
Well, I think there are some properties that are coming to the good, right? That are in a flood zone permanently that won't be in a flood zone once the new maps take effect. Those people have been very anxious for these maps to be approved and have been waiting since 2015.
Yeah,
The lucky ones.
Who will come out of the special flood hazard area, but there's also some that's going to find themselves moving into the special flood hazard area. There's some, we have citizens right now who can't do anything with their damaged house from the last hurricane because they're in a substantial damage situation. And they began repairs prior to getting permits and were determined to be substantially damaged. And we just had to shut their project down and leave them with a choice. They can either elevate their current house to the affected maps now, or demo, or wait for these new maps to be effective. Their elevations are coming down and it would allow them to proceed with repairs.
Last thing I'd like to comment is, I see Mr. Charles here and Gab News here. Whoever, when you write the article on this, I know you're going to have the input of these two right here. Only thing I can say is, please explain it in detail where we really had no choice in this matter. And I feel sorry for you. I'd hate to know I had to make a living writing an article on this subject. Thank you.
It's my understanding, Ms. Richardson, that the flood maps is not the result of the county's doing. It's the result of mandates being sent down by the federal government for the flood mapping.
Yes, sir. And like I said, they first started putting these out in 2015. They've been revised several times since then. Obviously, we had significant flooding during that time period.
Right.
Horry County, Charleston County have already adopted theirs. It's been a long time coming.
One question, Holly. or Stephen, with a significant number of non-conforming structures throughout the county, even though they're grandfathered, is that going to affect our flood rating?
It should, because there's no fault of our own.
So it wouldn't have any effect on the flood rating, really? Okay.
Got one more comment. Can we make sure that this is incorporated into the future land use map from an input standpoint?
Sure. I'm sure there will be a section dealing with flooding and hazards and that sort of thing. We also are currently looking at a draft of the resiliency element of the comp plan that talks a lot about flood hazards and those sort of things.
Thank you.
Okay. Now that we've had all the comments and questions from council and pertinent responses, is there a motion pertaining to ordinance number 23-11?
Mr. Chairman, I may move that we approve ordinance number 23-11.
If a motion for approval from Councilman Newton, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second from Councilman Anderson. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carries. We go down to ordinance number 23-12. I think the discussion that you had previously pertained to ordinance number 23-12 also. So is there a motion pertaining to ordinance number 23-12?
So moved.
We have a motion from Councilman Newton for approval. We have a second from Councilman Anderson. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Richardson. We move on down to the approval of minutes. The motion regarding our regular council meeting on February 28th, 2023. I think it's in your packet that you already seen. Is there a motion for approval? For adoption, rather. Is there a motion for adoption of the minutes of February 28th, 2023?
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Elliott. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Mercado. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. We move down to our regular council meeting of March 14th, 2023. Is there a motion for adoption?
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Carolina. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Newton. Any discussion? All in favor? Please raise your hand. Okay, motion carries. We'll now move down to executive session. We will need to go into executive session regarding briefing regarding an economic development matter pursuant to SC Code annotated section 30-4-70A5, and also a personnel matter pursuant to SC Code annotated section 30-4-70A1. Is there a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Carolina. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Elliott. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carries. We are now entering into executive session. Yeah. All council members are back. Is there a motion to move back into open session?
So move.
Moved by Council Newton. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Elliott. Any discussion? All in favor of moving back into open session, please raise your hand. Motion carries. Please note that we have just returned from executive session to have a briefing regarding an economic development matter pursuant to FC Code annotated section 30-4-78.5, and also discussion regarding personnel matter pursuant to FC Code annotated section 30-4-78.1. Please note also that while we're in executive session, no votes were taken regarding any of those particular matters. Is there any further business coming before council?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I would like to move that we extend the county administrator Christian's contract with the adjustment in compensation and terms of the contract as stated.
We have a motion for Councilman Newton to extend the contract of our administrator pursuant to terms discussed in executive session, right? Is there a second regarding Mr. Newton's motion?
Second.
We have a second from the remainder of council members. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carries. Is there any other business to come before council? Is there a motion for adjournment?
So move.
It's been moved by Councilman Elliott to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Mercado. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries. We stand adjourned. Thank you all.